In October 2025, two peer-reviewed papers were published. Not in UFO journals, not in fringe publications. One was in Scientific Reports, a journal owned by Nature, which is one of the most respected scientific publications in the world. The other was in the publications of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. The papers analyzed thousands of mysterious objects photographed in the night sky over California between 1949 and 1957. Objects that appeared in photographs and then vanished. Objects that analysis suggests were in orbit around the Earth. And this was before Sputnik, before any satellite that any nation on Earth has ever launched. And those objects were 45% more likely to appear within 1 day of a nuclear weapons test. 45% is statistically significant, peer-reviewed and published in Nature. The researchers themselves wrote that they couldn't rule out that nuclear weapons were attracting unidentified anomalous phenomena. And that sentence is in a Nature-published paper from scientists at Vanderbilt University and the Nordic Institute of Theoretical Physics in Stockholm. Now let me walk you through what they actually found. In the late 1940s through the 1950s, astronomers at Palomar Observatory in California, one of the most respected astronomical institutions in the world, conducted a systematic photographic survey of the sky. They pointed their 48-inch telescope at a patch of the sky and photographed everything. Stars, galaxies, nebula, the whole visible universe as seen from California. And the original photographic glass plates from that survey still exist. And in 2016, researchers began digitizing them and running computer analysis to look for anything unusual. Things that appeared in one photograph and were gone in the next. Objects that shouldn't be there. And they found them. Thousands of them. Short-lived flashes of light. Star-like objects that appeared on a photograph and were absent in images taken shortly before and after, lasting less than the 50-minute exposure time of each plate. Sometimes they appeared alone, sometimes they appeared in groups, multiple objects in a straight line or a narrow band in the same photograph. The project studying these anomalies is called VASCO, and that stands for Vanishing and Appearing Sources During a Century of Observations. It's a legitimate scientific network led by astronomer Beatrice Villarreal at the Nordic Institute for Theoretical Physics in Stockholm. They call these anomalies transients, and the question driving their research is simple. What are they? Because they ruled out the obvious explanations first. Plate defects, cosmic rays, gravitational lensing, gamma ray bursts, fragmenting asteroids, none of them fit the characteristics of what was being found. And when they looked at where in the sky the objects were appearing, the answer pointed somewhere that created a significant problem for conventional science. The analysis of the transients pointed toward a specific altitude. When the researchers studied the pattern of when the objects appeared and disappeared, accounting for the Earth's shadow and the geometry of orbital mechanics, the data suggested that objects were approximately 42,000 kilometers in altitude. 42,000 kilometers is geosynchronous orbit, the altitude at which a satellite travels at the same speed as the Earth rotates. That makes it appear to hover stationary above a fixed point on the ground. Modern communication satellites, GPS satellites, weather satellites, that's where we would put those things if we wanted them to stay in one place relative to the Earth. The first artificial satellite, Sputnik, was launched on October 4th, 1957. It orbited at 215 to 940 kilometers altitude, and that's in low Earth orbit, not geosynchronous. The first geosynchronous satellite was launched in 1963. The transients in the Palomar photographs were appearing at geosynchronous altitude between 1949 and 1957. Let's be clear about what that means. The researchers found evidence of objects at geosynchronous orbit 6 years before any nation on Earth launched anything into space at all, and more than a decade before anyone put anything into geosynchronous orbit. A 2026 paper published earlier this year independently confirmed the geosynchronous altitude finding using a different analytical method. Two separate research teams, same answer. Objects at 42,000 kilometers before Sputnik. Now that alone would be significant enough to warrant serious attention, but it's the second thing from the October 2025 papers that completely changes the nature of this question. Because it's not just where these objects were, it was when they appeared. The researchers created a dataset covering 2,718 days from November 1949 through April 1957. For each day they recorded three things: whether the transient appeared in the Palomar photographs, whether a nuclear weapons test was conducted anywhere in the world, and whether there were documented UFO reports from civilian witnesses. Then they ran the statistics. Transients were 45% more likely to appear on dates within 1 day of a nuclear weapons test. That statistical significance, expressed as a p-value for anyone who follows research methodology, was 0.008. In scientific research, a p-value below 0.05 is generally considered statistically significant. 0.008 is well below that threshold. That's not a marginal result, that's a clear statistical association. The strongest correlation was the day after a nuclear test. And it wasn't just nuclear tests. The researchers also found associations between the transients and civilian UFO reports from the same periods. On days when transients appeared in the photographs, there was a corresponding increase in civilian reports of unidentified objects in the sky. Now, the researchers were careful about what they concluded from this. They acknowledged the limitations. The UFO report data has noise in it. The Palomar photographs came from a single geographic location while tests and sightings happened worldwide. But they also said something that I think deserves to be duly noted. Their paper advances two hypotheses to explain what they found. The first is previously undocumented atmospheric phenomena triggered by nuclear detonations. The second, and they considered the first one to be highly unlikely, is that nuclear weapons attract UAP. Those are the researchers' words, published in scientific reports in a paper available on the National Institutes of Health website right now. Now I want to spend a moment on the objects themselves because those photographs are genuinely strange. One image from 1952 shows 5 transient objects appearing and disappearing within a single hour. 5 of them, in a cluster, in one photograph, gone in the next. Some images show multiple transients arranged in straight lines or narrow bands. The researchers called these aligned multiple transient events and gave them their own paper. Objects appearing together in geometrical arrangements. The 2026 paper, the independent confirmation that was published this year, found something additional. The transients responded to geomagnetic storms. After geomagnetic activity, disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field caused by solar events, there's a measurable decrease in transient appearances during the storm and an increase afterward, as if whatever is producing the objects is affected by the magnetic environment around the Earth. The geomagnetic response is what led the most recent researchers to conclude that these are reflective objects. Physical things in orbit that reflect sunlight, not atmospheric events, not camera effects. Reflective objects that respond to the magnetic field on the planet that they're orbiting. Reflective objects in geosynchronous orbit. Before any human nation had launched anything into space. The question of what the heck they are is one that mainstream science has not been willing to answer directly. But what the researchers who have studied them the most carefully have said, in their own words, is the part that I find the most significant. Stephen Brule is an anesthesiologist at Vanderbilt University Medical Center with a research interest in UAP. He co-authored both papers by Beatrice Villarroel. He said this to Live Science after the papers were published, and I quote, "We've ruled out some of the ordinary explanations, which means we have to at least consider that these might be artificial objects." And then he said something that I think is the most important question anyone has asked in UAP research in years. And I quote, "If these transients are reflective objects orbiting Earth and they predate Sputnik, who put them there? And why do they seem to show interest in nuclear testing?" End quote. Who put them there? A researcher at Vanderbilt University, published in a Nature journal, asking who put artificial objects in geosynchronous orbit before any nation on Earth had a space program. Beatrice Villarroel, the lead astronomer on the project, had been studying these photographs since 2016. She described the findings as something that has no easy explanation. She said the data suggests the presence of UFOs orbiting Earth in the 1950s. She wasn't speculating about UFOs, she was describing the data as suggesting their presence. But some scientists are more cautious. Some researchers have raised questions about the methodology. Some have noted that 1950s photographic plates have limitations that make precise analytics difficult. The scientific debate is ongoing, and that's appropriate. This is nowhere near settled. But here's what is settled. The papers were peer-reviewed and published. The statistical association is there. The geosynchronous altitude finding has been independently confirmed, and the conventional explanations have been ruled out one by one, which leaves a question that mainstream science is only just beginning to ask out loud. And here's where I kind of sit with all this. The 50s weren't a quiet time. They were the beginning of the nuclear age. We just dropped the first bombs on Japan. The United States and the Soviet Union were conducting test after test, dozens of detonations per year in Nevada, in the Pacific, and Kazakhstan. Nuclear weapons were reshaping the geopolitical order, and the threat of nuclear war was genuinely existential. And according to peer-reviewed research published in 2025, something in geosynchronous orbit was paying attention. 45% more likely to appear the day after a nuclear test. 5 objects appearing together in a single photograph. responding to Earth's magnetic field like physical reflective structures. Before Sputnik, before any satellite, before any nation on Earth had launched a single object into orbit. Now, I don't know what those objects were, and the researchers don't know either. That's the honest answer. But the question, who put them there, and why do they seem to care about nuclear weapons, is not a question from a conspiracy forum anymore. It's a question in a Nature journal, and I think that matters. The Vasco project is ongoing. Via Roel and her team are continuing to analyze the Palomar plates and expanding the research to other historical sky surveys. The 2026 paper was published just weeks ago. The research is active and growing. The 2 October 2025 reports are publicly available. One is in Scientific Reports, findable through Google Scholar or the NIH website. The other is in the publications of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. If you want to read the actual research, which I would encourage, it's all there. This is the kind of story that deserves more attention than it's getting. Peer-reviewed science suggesting that pre-Sputnik objects in orbit with a statistically significant association to nuclear testing. That's not a small claim, and the journals that published it are not small journals. Now, I don't want to keep dragging this one on, so I'm going to wrap this one up because the research is ongoing. As more develops on this, I'm sure I'll have more to talk about. As always, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so, like and comment. What do you think was up there before Sputnik, if anything? Was it secret satellites, maybe from another country spying on us? Or was it something else? Until next time, I'll talk to you later.